In the military, you're given a uniform and instructed on how to do things and when to do them. But what happens when the cadence fades and you're no longer wearing that uniform? I'm KP, and I started this podcast to fill that silence with direction and to provide overall support for my beloved military family. Welcome to the Morning Formation. This episode is powered by Act Now Education. Warriors, fall in. It's time for formation. This is take 2 now because I didn't hit record on the last podcast. Just going to be honest with everybody. I'm really energized today to have my guest that's on the show. His name is JP, and he started Military BJJ Gees, probably from the same passion that I came from when it came to the competitiveness behind Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And anyone that knows me, especially for the last 14 years or so, I've really been into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I've created a lot of friendships and a lot of really, really great memories doing this hobby of mine. So, JP, welcome to the Morning Formation.
Hello, it's nice to be here. I know that we've been exchanging DMs for a few weeks now, so I'm glad that we finally found a way to connect.
Heck yeah, man. I know, and I know that you're a very busy man. I had no idea that you were an active duty soldier.
Yes, sir. Unfortunately, I am. But you know what? There's a lot of time in the day, so I find ways to make it all work.
At least you're in a great place, right?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Where are you?
We are currently in Fort Drum, New York.
Yeah, that's that's funny because when I interviewed my dad, who served 20 years in the military, was drafted in '71. The one place that he wanted to avoid the most was Fort Drum, New York. He heard about how it was up in the mountains and it was just terrible weather and everything else, and he hated that.
Yeah, so I remember when I was a lieutenant, I said I will never go to Fort Drum, New York, and then I met a few coworkers of mine that were stationed there, and the way though when they told stories, I was like, wait, that sounds kind of cool, like just all how they're also on the St. Lawrence River and whatnots by Canada, and I was like, that sounds kind of cool. I'm gonna look into Fort Drum, and to make a long story short, I got a job offer from them. I called my now wife and I said, hey, would you want to go to Fort Drum, New York for a few years? And she said, yeah, if that's what you want to do. She's really awesome. And so we got stationed here about a year ago. So we have 2 more to go. And I like it so far. It's really close to Canada, really close to, New York City. Well, not too close, but close to Syracuse. There's some mountains near us, about a few hours away. So I like it so far. I'm a big snowboarder. I'm trying to get her into it. So
now, have you experienced any winters there yet?
Yes. The last winter was actually a pretty mild winter, from what all the locals have told us, but it was pretty intense still. We had a few days that were pretty high of snow and lake effect, but it's not too bad. It's definitely bearable.
So you just recently got married, right?
Yes, sir. 2224 actually, and then we're doing the ceremony in 52525.
Congrats on that, brother.
Thank you. Yeah.
That's awesome. It's very. Is she getting acclimated to the military lifestyle yet?
Oh yeah, yes, she is. I know it's not her favorite thing. For instance, I know Fort Drum isn't her favorite place ever, and I think part of the reason is because she works in banking, so she sees the worst of people. But yeah, she's getting used to it. I think she likes it.
So, if I were to ask you today, are you planning on staying in after your 4-year commitment, or you think you're going to transition out to the civilian world?
You know what? If you asked me a few weeks ago, I would probably have a different answer for you. But right now, I'm going to make it till 10. I'm 6 years in now. I'll do another 4 years, and then I'll see what's going on after that. Just because, to make a long story short, I don't want to, dedicate my entire existence to the military when you're a major to make lieutenant colonel. I just heard some really big horror stories. People work until 20 every night. And someone I work with, actually, I saw she sent me an email at 18:30, which is 6:30 p.m. And I was like, wow, you sent me an email at 6:30. And she's like, oh, that's an early night. She's like,
Mm,
so she's a major. I don't know if I want to do
mm.
that to my family. We'll see what happens though. It's hard to plan. Everyone I know that's in the military, they change their career paths every month. So
Well, I'm here to tell you, man, the one thing you can't buy back ever is time. It's always family first. But what is your so what is your background? So you said that you joined ROTC. Which college were you out of?
so I went to University of Alabama, and when I was in high school, um, my parents were saying, "Hey, college is really expensive. I don't know if we're going to be able to pay for a 4 year out of state tuition." And I remember being so mad about it. So I looked into joining the army or joining ROTC because that's always been a goal of mine is to join the military. And I knew that I wanted to join the military eventually. I just knew that I wanted to go to college first and get a degree. And so I looked into ROTC and I applied for the scholarship because I had a somewhat decent background with my grades and some of the things I've done, like Eagle Scout and wrestling. And I ended up winning the scholarship, but they gave me a 3 year instead of a 4 year. So I think the entire purpose of it was to basically test your mettle the first year, see how you are, and
Yep.
yeah. And I had friends that went to University of Alabama and they were heavily recruiting me, so it all worked out well.
Yeah, man. I remember when I was a gold bar recruiter for my university, that was the thing. We had several 4 year scholarship cadets that kind of washed out after that first year. So then they switched it to the 3 years, kind of a prove it year, your freshman year, to show up to PT in the morning, make sure this is something you really want to do. Um, and a lot of those cadets that came in for the 3 year actually made it. A lot of them did make it all the way through. Um, and I'm sure with you, they were on you as far as graduating on time, weren't they?
Um, Not too much, but I was definitely concerned about graduating on time. I think I was right on the cusp, but yeah, I made it out in 4 years, so knock on wood.
I had a professor of military science. He was about 6'4", big, like barrel chested guy, infantry ranger, and
Oh wow.
he was our professor of military science, and he was literally down our throat every day to make sure that we were staying on course every quarter, that we were going to graduate on time, and I did, but there were a few that slipped here and there. Um, your current I guess branch, you are now serving as what?
I'm an engineer officer right now, captain rank right now.
So is there a difference between and this is kind of a dumb question, but like the officer rank, is there a difference between the different types of engineers, like combat engineer versus, or are you just an engineer
Yeah, so I think
general?
my official title, yeah, so I'm just general. So it's engineer officer, and then combat engineer would be a 12 Bravo that they specialize in mobility and counter mobility, and then you have things like 12 Novembers, which are horizontal engineers, and they operate heavy equipment such as bulldozers and IHEMIs, things like that, things that you would see at a construction site.
Okay, so they do separate the officers, right, with the different types of engineers.
Yes, sir. I would say that an officer has a lot of width, but not a lot of depth, and soldiers have a lot of depth, but not a lot
Yeah.
of width. If that makes sense.
Yeah, because when I was in, I was truly, and it's probably changed because I got out in 2007. But when I was in, um, I was truly an ordnance officer, but I got switched over to transportation, which was weird because like they said that command is command, so like we can put you in charge of anything in combat service support. And then I had a buddy of mine. He was field artillery, but he ended up in charge of a infantry platoon. So it's kind of interesting how they look at leadership and command time and your platoon leadership and your company command stuff and everything in between. So, all right, so you're already in '03, so you've been in quite a few years. Have you taken command yet or no?
No, that's it's coming up in the next year or two. So right now we're going through this thing called R struck. So our unit is consolidating, and we're getting smaller, unfortunately. So there's going to be there's going to be a few less command opportunities for me. So we were hoping initially that it was going to be sometime this year, but now it looks like it's going to be sometime next year. So, but it's okay. I'm not in any rush to do command at all.
Yeah, no, it's a headache when you're actually having to sort of babysit, a hundred or more soldiers at a time, getting calls day and nights, weekends, holidays, and everything in between. So, talk to me about your overall journey, your Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu journey, when it started for you, um, and how it's been so far, and what it means to you.
Okay. So when I was young, I started in third grade. I was doing football, and I did football for 3 years, and then going into my fourth year of football, I think the weight cut was crazy. I weighed 120 pounds, and they wanted me to be 100 pounds, if I recall correctly. And I remember my grandpa saying, like, "There's no way you're gonna do that as a kid. That's super unhealthy. I think you should look at a new sport." And there was a boxing gym down the street, and I told my mom, "I don't think I should play football anymore. I think that I should do a new sport." And I remember I always thought fight scenes in movies were super cool. I always wanted to learn how to fight. So in sixth grade, I joined a boxing gym, and then I I heard there was a class going on called Jitsu or something like that, and the kid told me they taught him how to, do a simple roll, and he's like, "Yeah, I learned how to do a backflip." And looking back, it's so funny, and I thought that sounded cool, so I went, and then I learned that you couldn't even strike, and I was like, "What the hell is this?" But for whatever reason, I stuck with it. I did that on and off until high school, and then I joined the wrestling team in high school, so I left jujitsu and all my other combat sports behind, and but it never left me. I always, whenever I kept watching UFC. I'd stay up to date with, you know, the jiu-jitsu community. I remember watching the John Danaher podcast with Joe Rogan and in college still. And I remember saying, when I get out of college, I'm going to pursue jiu-jitsu full time, and I'm going to become a black belt one day, because I've have a lot of experience and I love it. And once I started making my own money, I started jiu-jitsu when I got home, and I graduated. And then when I went into my active duty time, I continued with it. There was a gym just off base. I think most bases have a gym nearby. Made some friends with the people in the combatives house, and there's been times where I've had to pause just due to workload in my career, but for the most part, I've been pretty consistent for the past 6 years. And I regret so bad, if there's any white belts listening, please take my advice and compete now, because I didn't compete as a white belt, and I'm looking back and I'm kicking myself for it. But
So, what belt are you now?
I'm a blue belt.
Blue belt. Okay.
Yeah. So I've done 4 tournaments. I guess you could say I won 3 of them. One of them was very competitive. I went 2-2. I have another one coming up in September. I'm 2 stripes away from a purple belt. I'm super excited, and yeah, I have no plans of stopping anytime soon.
You're probably one of those blue belts that has like an infinity battery that just doesn't quit, man. I am now a brown belt, and I can tell you that when I was a purple belt and I would walk into a new gym, it was like every single blue belt was dive bombing me to see, like, just to see what I was made of, and then I had to be like Teflon and like try to fight them all off and stuff. And it's like it's cool, but then it's like, God, like I need kind of a, like, I want to relax a little bit, want to break a little bit. So I remember being in that phase as well when I was a blue belt. I was always like trying to, like, God, I want to get this guy, I want to get this guy, and it's a great competitive nature. You're right about what you said about competing as a white belt. That's the best time to compete, man. Like, I remember I did Naga, I did IBJJF, and then even as a blue belt, I competed as well. But the higher you get, man, I feel like the pressure is on even more, um, to do those tournaments, man. And I can tell you right now, like the weight cut. I mean, the older I get, the harder it is to cut weight. Um, and that's I did one tournament. I don't know if you've done any tournaments yet without cutting weight. I did one tournament and I did not cut weight, and I regretted it because
Oh, really? Okay.
everybody I faced was huge. They were taller than me and bigger than me, and it was like, God, I should have cut weight.
Okay, that's good to hear, because I'm a I wrestled, so I'm used to cutting weight, and I've cut weight a lot. And I went down. I will walk around right now. I think I'm 175.
Yeah.
And the last tournament I did in April, I went to 155, and that was a super
Mm,
brutal experience. Everyone was worried about me, but I made it, and I got double gold that day, so
nice,
I was
nice,
happy.
nice. Yeah, I wrestled as well in high school, and freaking I did one tournament where I cut down to 145, and right now I'm
Oh wow.
I'm right now I'm 185, but I just dropped 15 pounds a couple weeks ago. Um, and it's amazing because you being a high school wrestler, I think that that's really important because mentally, even in high school, you've been places that most high school kids have never been when it comes to understanding hard work, discipline, um, eating habits, all those things. I actually had a buddy of mine whose kid was just starting high school 4 or 5 years ago, and I told him, I said, wrestling is where it's at. There's no better sport out there where there's more pressure and adversity on just you. It's not really a team effort because when you're on the mat, it's just you and someone else. The lights are on you, and everyone's watching you, and you have to overcome that pressure. Because I remember when I wrestled in high school, man, when I remember I lost one match one time, and I actually had a parent walk up to me and tell me straight up, they were like, "Yeah, looks like you just quit,"
Oh
and
God,
and
that's
I was
terrible
like,
to say.
and I was just like, okay, and but that's the type of like everyone's watching you, man. So wrestling is like my number one high school sport to recommend for anyone out there, man.
Yeah,
So
that's funny you mentioned. I remember in high school going against. It was the best team in our league, and I was beating him, and then he came back in the second or third quarter and tied it up. And third quarter, he ended up pinning me, and I remember it was all the lights were off in the entire gymnasium except for on the mat, and the
mm,
lights were so it's bright where we are, but you could see it's dark all around you. And I remember him pinning me, and I'm looking at all these parents upside down, clapping in the dark, and they're cheering because he just beat me. And I remember like, oh, so I definitely resonate with what that story you just said. All the pressure's on you.
yeah, no doubt. With you being in the military, you're probably gonna, if you stay in the military, you're gonna have to move around and go to different gyms. And do you ever have any reservations about that? About walking into a new gym, especially once you get that purple belt, man, and you walk into a gym. The story I just told you right now, you're gonna get dive bombed by every white belt and blue belt in there just to test your metal, man.
Yeah, that's you're bringing back another memory now. So yes, uh, every time you walk into a new gym, it's new faces and people that they now see you. They see you as a piece of meat, basically. But like they're hungry lions and you're a piece of meat. But I remember the last gym I was actually at, the team captain, he was a blue belt and I was a blue belt, and he definitely saw me as a threat. And I remember he was talking a lot of smack during warm ups, and the coach had everyone get around us, and we went at it. So
Yeah,
yeah, that's another story. But yep, I've made a lot of connections. I think I've been at like 6 gyms now. Um, it's hard to maintain, build relationships with the coach because sometimes you get new coaches so often. But
yeah,
it is what it is. You gotta make the most out of your time at your duty station.
yeah. And that's the thing I love about jujitsu so much is I've actually created some really great lifetime friendships with people that have led me to other things, other opportunities out there, and that's the hardest part. Is you train with these guys, you bruise with these guys, you bleed with these guys and gals, and it's kind of hard to say goodbye to them. And over the years,
Yeah,
I've moved around so much, man. But I have families all over the U.S. My training family.
yeah. I mean, if I was going to talk to anybody, if a kid came up to me today and said, "Hey, I want to join the military. What should I know before I go in?" I would One of the first things I would say is, you build these relationships with people that would probably last forever if you guys lived in the same area. And then a few months later, that person might be in Europe. Like I have a friend right now. I'm gonna invite him to the wedding. I invited him to my bachelor party. He's a good friend of mine, but he lives in Europe, so it's hard to
Yeah,
maintain friendships that far. And one of my other friends, he lives here. He's my neighbor actually, but he's moving in October back home to Denver, and that's another friendship that would probably last, my whole life had we been in the same place. Of course, I'm going to try my absolute best to maintain relationships with these people, but it's always difficult long distance.
Yeah, yeah. But you know what? You've always got a place that'll welcome you no matter where you're at. Like I know when I started in Chicago, Cincinnati, New Jersey, whenever I go back to those states, I always stop by and see those folks and maybe get a couple of rolls in, and just see how much we've progressed or how much we haven't progressed, and it's a great time, man. So I understand your overall passion with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but talk to me like what led you to start Military BJJ Gees?
Okay, yeah, I love this story. Um, so unfortunately, when I was a cadet, we had a suicide in one of our classrooms, and the person who died by suicide actually sat next to me in class, and he was a 13 Bravo. For those of you who don't know, that's an artilleryman. So that was a bummer, definitely. And then when I was in, then I commissioned, started my time in active duty, and then when I was PCSing from Fort Leonard Wood to when I was PCSing from Fort Leonard Wood to JBLM, Washington, I was stopping in Denver for the night with my mom, and unfortunately, I woke up to a Facebook notification that a service member that I went to cadet camp with, unfortunately, died by suicide while he was deployed. And that one definitely stung because it was someone who went to a college in my hometown, and it was someone who is a super nice guy. And if you look at old photos of us, he looks like the class clown in the photos. So that was a bummer. And then um, unfortunately there's a third one. So when I was in processing JBLM, I was with this guy who was wearing the same unit patch as me, and we started talking. And I was like, "Hey, you're going to my unit. Like, what company are you going to?" And he was going to the same company I was. And I was like, "Oh, that's awesome. Like, what are you going to do?" He's like, "I'm going to be a platoon sergeant." I was like, "No way. I'm going to be a platoon leader. Maybe we're going to be together." And he's like, "Yeah, I guess we'll see what happens." And we ended up not being together, actually, but he was the platoon sergeant of my sister platoon. So we worked together quite a bit in the first 4 months. And then, unfortunately, on Veterans Day of 2021, we came to morning formation, and we got news that he unfortunately died by suicide. And every time there's a suicide in the military, they take it very serious. But another thing you see are everyone likes to do the push-up challenge, the 22 push-ups for 22 days, and they record it on Facebook and they upload it. And I think that's great because it does raise a lot of awareness for military suicide. But I remember saying to my mom when this was happening, I said, "I wish that we did more for military suicide than just doing push-ups on Facebook." And she's like, "Well, it raises awareness." And I was like, "Yeah, I know, but still, I wish there was more." And going to my gym in Washington, great gym. If you are stationed in JBL in Washington, definitely check out Alliance Academy. Everyone likes to wear the tactical jiu-jitsu, so I think Origin, DD214 is another great company. And I thought, I think I could probably make these on my own. And I talked to a few different people. I talked to my mom about it again, and she said, "Well, you could go on Alibaba and you can, you know, talk to a textile manufacturer, and they could probably make it for you." And I was like, "Oh, you think?" She's like, "Yeah." And then so I went on Alibaba. Did a little bit of research, and ironically, this is a funny story. So I was just scrolling through Alibaba, and I did this thing. I said, "Request a quote," and someone DM'd me on Instagram the next day, and I was like, "How'd you find me?" And they're like, "Yeah, we saw that you requested a quote on Alibaba, so we searched your name, and I think we could work with you. Like, we can offer you a sample. We could offer you this, that, and the other." And I was like, "Okay, we'll see what happens." And then, so I started talking to a few people, and I said, "Do you think that if I had a jiu-jitsu company and I made military style jiu-jitsu gis and rash guards, do you think that it would be profitable? You think it'd be a good idea?" And I think I talked to probably 5 different people about it, and they all said, "Yeah, that's a great idea. And even if you do it, I'll buy one from you." And I said, "Okay, perfect. That sounds great." And so I was like, "Okay, I'm going to try this out." I'm just going to order 5 or 10 gis, and I'm going to see how this works. And I had all the ideas set in my mind, and I've made a lot of good friends over the years with post office workers and tailors, because I sometimes I see them on a weekly basis. But so I received my first shipment of jiu-jitsu gis. I think I received 5 at that point, and I took a photo of it and I put it on Facebook, and I made an announcement that I was starting a jiu-jitsu company, and I was going to donate the proceeds to veteran suicide. And so I put my phone. I usually always have it next to my bed, and I put it over at a table adjacent to my bed. And throughout the night, I could hear my phone go buzz, 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 buzz. And when I was sleeping, I remember thinking, okay, I think I'm getting a lot of traction. And I woke up, and I was sold out. So those 5 gis are already, I already sold out. So I was already the next day ordering a new shipment of 5 gis. And unfortunately, it's kind of ironic, because one of the first people I talked to, who was a good friend of mine, and we don't affiliate with each other anymore, but he was my first customer, and he ended up not paying me for the gis. So I've learned a lot of lessons, and I'd say the rest is history. But throughout the years, I've made a lot of really good friendships with people who I've never even met before. You know, I've designed entire, uniforms for wrestling academies and jiu-jitsu academies. I have a photo of a jiu-jitsu academy in Michigan, and I'd say there's 25 people in the photo, all wearing my gi. And yeah, so it's a pretty awesome experience. I've sold merchandise to police. I've sold merchandise to veterans, active duty, just random supporters of the military. But yeah, it's been a wild journey so far. For I definitely did not expect to make it this far and make this much money and raise this much amount of proceeds too to all these
Yeah,
companies.
no, I think it's a great purpose, man, and bringing up a lot of great awareness. How many years you been doing this?
I think I've been doing this. I think I started in 2021, so this is my 3rd year doing this.
Those 5 gis that you had, I mean, there's so many different sizes. How did you know which ones to put up there?
It was just a lot of luck. So I did have one buyer, is the person who ripped me off, but I had one buyer, and so I knew what he wanted, and then I just kind of A2 is a pretty average size. I think I
Yeah.
ordered maybe 2 more A2s and one A3, and it ended up working out. And one thing I've learned is, even if you have sizes, you know, it's kind of like an art of the deal with Trump. It takes years to sit on deals. What he says. So one thing I've learned is about all these sizes, that you have to just sit and wait and wait and wait, and one day someone will finally buy it. So
Yeah.
I've yeah, I have stuff that I've probably had for over a year now,
But
and
yeah, by then it'll be in TJ Maxx in one of the offline sections or at Ross's. But hey, man, I just want to acknowledge real quick, man. I'm sorry to hear about the multiple suicides that you experienced while you were going through your training. I know that some of those folks that you probably knew pretty well, and you probably would joke and smoke and have a few beers with. So you probably got really tight with those folks, and I understand why you would do this to raise awareness for military suicide. And it's a really tough thing, man, because I know of all the hardships that we go through being in the military, and then we're kind of forced to put on this persona or this outward like projection of, hey, I'm a strong individual, I'm a strong
Mhm.
officer, look at me, I'm a captain, or I'm a lieutenant, or I'm a staff sergeant, or and in reality, we have a lot of things going on in the background that we fail to take care of. I can tell you this much, man. Jiu-jitsu, whenever I'm at my lowest point, jiu-jitsu has always been there for me. And I've always felt great afterwards. Whenever I was going through it, I knew that I could go to my gym, get in a good
Mhm.
hour-long session, and go home, versus the alternative is take myself out to the bar and drink myself into an oblivion. um, it's always been a positive thing for me to do jujitsu, and that's why I love it so much, and it's so near and dear to my heart. There are a couple of it's funny because I have one gi. that is it's kind of the old BDU pattern,
Oh, awesome.
and I can't find it anywhere. And I was like, why does no one make the pattern BJJ Gees from the old military uniforms? So like the old BDUs, it'd be nice if they made like the desert ones that were patterned like from Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Enduring Freedom, and then even the current ones. Like, have you looked
Mhm.
into that at all?
Yeah. So ironically, I'm actually shipping 2 rash guards right now to a school in Olympia, Washington, and those are going to be chocolate chip. I'm sure you're familiar with that pattern.
Yeah,
It's the old school Desert Storm pattern. I
right.
think that's the coolest camo we have. So,
Yeah,
but
that's what I wore.
yeah, I can yeah, I could basically do any design. I just haven't done it for the geese. The geese I like to do plain color, but I'm definitely not against. I'm definitely not against doing a camo pattern for the gi. But hey, whatever you need, I got you. Just let me know what you need.
I will, man. I'll shoot you a picture. So for anyone out there listening, if they're interested in a specific type of gi, do you do the do you do like any kind of requests, or is it you do like mass orders?
Mix of both. So usually how it works is I'll have a certain design and then people will order that from me. But additionally, I have done mass orders for a few different academies. So that school in Michigan, they actually ordered, I think it was 26 from me. But I could, any type of design that you need, I could do any type of specification. So anyone that's listening, if you have any type of academy, whatever it may be, if you are in a wrestling team or any type of sports team, I can design any type of textile essentially. But I like to do Brazilian jiu-jitsu, of course, but it doesn't have to be that.
Okay, cool. So is this something you think you want to pursue when you get out of the military too?
That's funny you say that because I remember when I was stationed at JBLM, I would take so many packages to the post office, and I remember one day the post office worker was like, "Is this your business? Do you do this on the side?" And I said, "Yes, I do." And then the next time I came, he's like, how many are you shipping out today?" And I had probably like 5 or whatever. And he's like, "Are you gonna get out of the military and just do your business full time?" And I'm like, "Oh no, I can't do that much. That's a lot of merchandise, but I definitely will. I have no plans of stopping anytime soon. So when I'm out, I will definitely continue military BJJ Gees. However, I full time, there's no way. But I've always had. I mean, we'll see where the future takes us because I've definitely had aspirations of doing that. Of course, when you start, you always have the imagination that you're going to be on Shark Tank one day.
This is a journey, man. I mean, if you asked me 20 years ago if I would be where I'm sitting right now, I would say no. I mean, podcasting wasn't even a thing back when I started my entire career while I was in the military. No one knew what podcasting was, except for Joe Rogan. Pretty much, he was doing it. Um, so here I am today, man. So you just never know, right? You got to keep your options open. You mentioned earlier about your business journey, and you said you got to know the textile and the post office workers really well, and I would imagine that's not just from seeing them, but it's also from making mistakes, right? And having
Oh
set
yeah.
and having setbacks. Can you talk about some of those and like what stopped you from stopping?
Oh gosh. Well, so like I said earlier, my first 2 gees, I didn't get paid for, and the third one, it was my first. It took the guy like a year to pay me, but I eventually got the money. So it's obviously, when you start off like that, it's really rough. And and I remember the first shipment of rash guards I got. I sent one to a guy, and it stained his gi, and I remember wearing
Oh
it myself,
no.
and yeah, and it stained my skin, and I was like, "Oh God, like this is so bad." And it was so hard to get your feet under you at first, but like anything in life, when you first start off, it's going to be rough, and you're going to go through trial and error. And I
Ups
remember,
and downs, ups
my
and downs.
yeah, and my wife, she showed me a way to ship things for $10. And I remember when I was first starting out, I would go to the post office and I would say, I need to ship these, and it would be 60 for just shipping a gi. But yeah, but it's a lot of trial and error. And just last week, actually, I think this was maybe last week or the week before, I was talking to one of the manufacturers, and we had a giant miscommunication. And I showed him a design, and I said I wanted it to be something like this, and he thought that that was the final design. And so when I came back with my final design and I showed him, he said, "Oh, I'm already done manufacturing this." And the person I was making this for is a very, very loyal customer, and he was ordering probably 20 sets of these rash guards and shorts. And so I knew I wasn't going to give him the product he didn't ask for. So I just paid out of pocket, and I said, "Hey, man, you got a shipment of about 20 rash guards and shorts that you didn't want, but hey, just take it as a gift, do whatever you want with them, and I'll get you your design, and I'll get you the design you wanted in about a week or so." So that was a $400 mistake out of my pocket, but you know what? You just gotta keep going and keep trying.
Yeah. Keep ducking and weaving, staying in the pocket, right?
Yeah, I mean, like I was talking about earlier, when you have these big deals that go through and you're working with people and you're designing, dozens of sets of merchandise, like rash guard and short combos, you just have to remember that if you send them an incomplete product, they're not going to come back. They're going to say that guy sucks. He sent us the wrong design. So it's better to just take the hit, and then send them what they want, and they'll come back. And that $400 mistake you made is going to be, you're going to pay that off because of your loyalty to them.
Yeah. Yeah, man, it's definitely trial and error and frustrating and everything in between. But you know what? That's what separates the men from the boys in this kind of business, man. So you've been going on strong for what, 3 years now, right?
Yes, sir.
So the goal is to build this up to a black belt level business, as well as receiving your black belt as well. And you're, man, God bless your journey, dude. You're a blue belt now, but hopefully the next time we talk, you're a purple, and then you'll be moving right up the ranks, man. And one of the biggest challenges for me has been just the injuries, life, moving, everything in between. And once you have kids and everything else, man, your family will start to hate jujitsu because it takes up so much time. So get in as many roles as you can now. That's my advice to you.
Yeah, I've made a deal with my wife. I said, when we have kids, I'm gonna do 2 days a week, and the other 2 days I'll do at home.
You can compromise, man. Once they get old enough to walk and they get to around 4 years old, you can start taking them to jujitsu as well. I just took my 4-year-old to jujitsu the other day, and then I've got a 9-year-old that's been doing it for a couple months now. So,
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah,
Yeah. I'm actually. I think I might go in tonight to do a kids coaching, and I've done in my last gym. I was one of the kids coaches, and it's super funny to coach the kids because some need help on every single move, and some have no idea what's going on. And
yeah.
and I remember being that kid. I remember I would ask for help all the time as a kid too, because I was terrible.
Yeah, you're lucky, man. You started. You said at 6 years old. You're lucky you started that young, and your parents got you into it. Back in the day, my dad was like, "No, you don't need to know." Well, it was back in the '80s when I grew up, so we still believed that WWF was a real thing, and we now know that it's not real. So, but at any rate, man, before we jump off here, before we finish up the podcast, I got a couple of final questions for you. So, Are you a light weave or are you a heavy weave BJJ guy?
I would say heavy weave. That's what
Yeah?
we do for. Yeah, that's what we do for all of the gis that I order.
Why is that?
Just it's better quality in my opinion, and it's a lot easier to put the designs and whatnot on there. And
I see.
you could always hide things with sublimination too. It's yeah, but when you especially when you keep adding things, the inside rash guard lining and with sublimination, and you add designs on the inside or on the outside of it, you're gonna add weight to it, so it's better to just do heavy weave.
Okay, yeah. From a consumer side of it, being the user that I am, I see value to both. Like sometimes when I travel, I like the lighter ones because they can roll up in my luggage easier. But then the heavy ones are kind of harder to grab, for someone else. So I like not giving people an advantage. But there's pros and cons to all of it. But I definitely want to have a conversation with you because I am interested in some patterns. I love wearing anything that's military related especially when I'm rolling on the mats and doing jujitsu. Before we round things off here, man, is there anything else that you'd like to mention that I didn't talk about during this podcast?
Yeah. One thing I would say to anyone listening, if you have an idea, whatever it is, if you, it's whether it's a business idea or, just a new hobby, something you've always wanted to try and you haven't, I just give it a shot. And the worst thing that happens is you fail. My wife, for instance, she bought all this material to make bracelets and whatnot. And she hasn't done it yet. And I keep saying like, hey, just try it out because she wants to sell them eventually. And I'm like, hey, remember Military BJJ Gees? Like, I didn't think I would make it this far. Just try it out. And so, whatever, I say this to people in the military too. Is like the worst thing that happens is if you fail this course, that's the worst that's going to happen is you fail, and then you embarrass yourself, and you have a mistake. It's better than having a regret.
I definitely agree with that, man. When I started this whole podcast thing, I realized really quickly that Amazon doesn't sell motivation. Um, I can buy all the mics, all the cameras I want, the mixers, everything, the whole 9 yards. But at the end of the day, it's up to me to make sure that I make it happen. And JP, this has been, I think you've really, man, I mean, I've done a lot of different types of interviews over the years, and I've interviewed MMA people who are military. I think this is the first time I've interviewed anyone that does an apparel um, for jujitsu and is also military. And I think that I've enjoyed this conversation more than I have any conversation in a really, really, really long time. So I appreciate you giving me your time and by the way, let's not mention today is the Army's birthday, and that's why you're hooky and
Yes, sir.
you're not working today. So happy birthday, Army.
Thank you very much. So, for those of you listening, we have $1,000 goal this year to raise for veteran suicide charities such as Mission 22 and Stop Soldier Suicide. We're at $338 this year, and by December 31st, I'd love for that to have at least 4 digits in there. So let's all get there together.
Yeah, man, it's a great goal. It's a great cause. It's a great purpose, and it's a great reason, man. I loved hearing your story about why you're doing what you're doing, and I just really appreciate giving your time. Now, I'm gonna make sure that in the show notes that I put the links to your Instagram, and if you're located on any other social medias out there, um, my most hated one is probably Facebook, but I am on Facebook too. But I will put that on there as well. So just let me know, and I can put all that in the show notes. And for the folks listening out there, make sure you connect with JP. He's currently an active duty soldier stationed up in the middle of nowhere, desert, upstate New York, mountain division. And support him in his cause because at the end of the day, soldier suicide is a big deal. It's more than just push-ups. Let's do a little bit something more to really make a difference and make it more meaningful than what we have in the past. And I know that suicide has touched you directly, and it's touched a lot of us, especially those of us in the military, with all the hardships that we go through. So let's uh, let's help him out with his goal. JP, you got anything else for the audience?
No, just check me out and feel free. Any questions you have, I respond very quickly. So if you have any questions at all, feel free to reach out. Thank you very much for your time today.
All right, folks, and make sure you connect with JP. As for the Morning Formation podcast, as always, I want you to stay tuned, stay focused, and stay motivated. Warriors, fall out.